Well, leadership is hard, but sometimes we make it a lot harder than it needs to be. Here's one of the ways we do that. We don't delegate. Or if we do, we delegate tasks instead of outcomes or responsibilities. So let me share with you some thoughts that I got about how to delegate and how to delegate well. Delegate or die, dramatic title, right? But what I mean is not that you're going to die if you don't delegate. You are going to die, but not because you didn't delegate. So am I. I'm going to die, not because I didn't delegate. But what will die is our momentum will die, creativity, the engagement of our team, maybe an opportunity, maybe an idea will die if we don't delegate, and delegate very, very well. So I'd like to share with you 6 different roadblocks that you and I encounter when we need to delegate that kind of slow us down, or maybe they're bigger than a roadblock. Maybe they're an actual chasm and they stop us from delegating. 6 different roadblocks. If you can overcome these 6 roadblocks, then you will probably be a very effective delegator. Hang around for a few minutes. At the end, I'll show you literally how to delegate and what I've learned. And I might have learned some of this from some of you too. So you might be sitting back and sipping your bourbon and saying, yeah, I do that. Check. I do that. Check. Let's walk through and talk about delegation and what do we mean by it. So delegation really is what happens when you and I hand off authority, responsibility, and accountability for achieving a result to another person or to another group. And they own it all. We don't hand off part of it, we hand off all of it. That's what delegation is. Delegation is kind of hard to do. And it sounds easy on the surface, and then you've tried it before and it might not have worked. Or maybe someone has delegated to you. They said, here, this is yours. And then the moment you took it and went in a direction you thought you should go, they stepped in and went, and they grabbed it back from you, or at least part of it. It can be kind of frustrating. So let's walk through and talk about some of the things that we have learned that's been a little bit difficult to learn for me, and maybe it's easier for you to learn. So what have we learned? What are the 6 roadblocks that are in the way between you and I and delegating effectively? The first roadblock is this one. We actually don't delegate results. We delegate tasks instead of results. Now, a result is the outcome that you want, the thing that you want that'll stand on its own when all of the work is done. When you and I delegate a series of tasks, here's 11 things I want you to do, call this, do that, do this, do that, and we arrange them in some sort of order and hand that off to a person, that is not true delegation. We're simply assigning tasks for that person to do. Delegation is, first of all, delegation of a result that we're after. So the first speed bump, I guess, that you and I want to get over, or the first roadblock that we encounter, is we don't know what result we're trying to achieve. We are kind of vague and unclear about that. We want to be crystal clear about the result we're trying to achieve. And when we are, that then sets us up to actually delegate. So think about it. Think of a time when someone delegated to you and it didn't go so well, or when you tried to delegate to someone else and it didn't go so well. It's likely because you weren't crystal clear on the result that you actually wanted. There's a story about an army sergeant who said to one of his privates, go get me a white rock. So the private ran off, found a white rock, and brought it back. And he said, no, not this one. Get me a white rock. And the guy went out multiple times, every time coming back with a different shape, a different size, different shade of white rock. And finally, at the very end, the sergeant got a white rock that was shaped a bit like a loaf of bread, and it was about this big, and the sergeant said, this is what I want, and then turned around and used it as a doorstop behind the door going into the building that he was standing in front of. And the private, of course, was very frustrated by that and said something like, why didn't you tell me what you wanted to use the white rock for? I would have found that one first. If the sergeant had delegated, he would have said, private, I need a rock roughly the size of a loaf of bread to hold open this really strong door so we can use it as a doorstop right here. It needs to be about like that. It needs to be heavy enough to give me the result to keep the door open because it's really windy around here. There, the result I'm after, a rock, that's white, that'll hold that door open in the wind. Go find one. Now the private may not have come back with one that was exactly shaped the way that the sergeant wanted it to actually be, but he would have come back with something that accomplished the result that he was actually after. There's roadblock number one. I'm not clear in the results that I want to delegate. Therefore, I default to delegating a series of tasks. If you can get clear on the result you want, you will overcome that first roadblock. Here's the second roadblock. Maybe you're just too good at the thing you're delegating. Maybe you have been so skilled and so experienced in accomplishing that result that you're after, you're so good at it that it is very difficult for you to let go of that and give it to someone else who may not do it the way you do it or may not be as good as you are at it. Maybe you're just too good at it. That's the second roadblock. It's difficult. It's more difficult in my experience to delegate things to people in areas where I have a great deal of expertise and I really like doing it. But if I don't learn how to delegate those things to someone who will come back and achieve the result, but perhaps in a different way than I would, then I will not be able to delegate. So maybe the second roadblock is you. You're just too good at it. Watch out for that. Those will be the areas where you will likely have a hard time delegating. The third roadblock, let's just get personal here. Maybe I'm just lazy. Well, how could that possibly be? How could that be a roadblock? Here's the idea. It's hard work up front to delegate to somebody. If I have a clear idea in my mind, a clear picture of the result that I'm trying to achieve, and I'm fairly good at achieving it, it's easier for me to do it myself than to delegate it to somebody else. And so really, I don't think of myself as lazy. I'm a hard worker, I'm doing it, but actually I'm taking the path of least resistance by keeping it to myself. It is, however, very short-sighted, because if I'm doing that, then that's all I'm doing. I'm not doing the thing over here that has a higher value or something that has a bigger impact out in time. I'm only doing that thing, and I'm doing it because it's easier for me to do it than to delegate it to you and to clearly communicate to you what the results are that I'm after. The fourth roadblock is that maybe I'm afraid. I'm afraid that if I delegate this to you, here's the result that I'm trying to achieve. Here, take it and run with it. And I've given you some constraints that you're going to screw it up. Maybe you're not going to do as good a job as I want, or maybe worse, you will actually mess it up so badly that it'll have to be redone. So I'm kind of afraid to delegate this to you if I've never delegated this to anyone before, or maybe if I've never delegated this kind of thing to you before. I'm afraid, so I delegate part of it to you. In effect, I'm actually only delegating tasks when I do that and not delegating the responsibility for the outcome to you. So I'm afraid, got to overcome that roadblock or I will not delegate. This is a very common one. It's very likely that you wouldn't say to yourself or someone else, well, I'm afraid to delegate this to that person because they'll screw it up. You'll probably be much more polite outwardly than that. But in your head, you know you're afraid to delegate because you think they're going to screw it up. It's going to cost the opportunity. It's going to cost time, going to cost money, reputation, yours, theirs, your enterprise's reputation. So there it is. I am afraid. Here's the fifth roadblock. Maybe I'm a bit overconfident. I think I'm good at it. I think my idea is amazing. After all, how hard could it be to do that? And I'm a bit overconfident in my ability. This relates to the second one, which is I'm quite good at it. Maybe I'm not good at it, I just think I am good at it. And maybe you're going to be, if I delegate it to you, you're going to be really good at it, but I think I'm better. I'm a bit overconfident. Maybe I'm not all that good at it. Maybe I'm surrounded by people just like the family members on American Idol when the contestant comes in for the preliminaries and they sing in front of the judges and the judges frown and look aside and they go, oh, you're awful. No, you don't get to go ahead. And then that contestant goes out and all the family members gather around. Well, what do those judges know? You're amazing. You can do anything. When really, that person's listening to the wrong people. That person should be listening to the judges, not to people around them who care more about them than they do about their feelings. They just want to make them feel good all the time. That's not it. So maybe you need to have a couple of folks around who say to you, you're not all that good at this, even though you think you are. There's a roadblock. Here's the last one, the sixth roadblock. So maybe you are good at it. Maybe you're lazy. Maybe you're afraid. Maybe you haven't done the hard work to describe the result. Maybe you have done all of those things. Maybe you're fine, but here's the biggest roadblock of all. Maybe you don't have the right people. This is a very common thing for us to say. I want to delegate it to somebody, but I don't have the right people to do it. A couple problems with this. Maybe I didn't hire people to whom I can delegate. And maybe I'm making the decision for them. Oh, they all seem so busy, I'm not going to ask them to do it. Instead of giving them the opportunity to work on the project or on the idea that I'm going to delegate to them to achieve that result. Instead of doing that, I think, oh, they're all too busy. So I don't even know if I have the right people because I haven't tried it out yet, or I just don't have the right people. This means I've got to do some hard work to make sure that I get the right people and I get them trained, skilled, and set up so that they can take on this next challenge. That is a very, very powerful one. And in a labor market that sometimes can be very, very tight, sometimes it's hard to find the right people. But understand, if you don't get the right people and that result you're trying to achieve is a crucial result or a core result of your enterprise and of your mission, if you don't find the right people, you're going to be doing that work yourself forever. There you go. There are 6 roadblocks that you and I can experience. Now, here's the real question. How do we actually overcome this? How do we delegate? Well, here are 4 simple ideas about how we delegate. Number 1, you heard it before, get crystal clear about the result you're trying to achieve. You should be able to describe in writing and in person, verbally, to a person, the result you're trying to achieve. And the result has a so that engaged in it. I want this result so that this. I want this result so that this. And the person gets a very, very clear idea of the result you're trying to achieve. You got to work hard at understanding what that result is yourself and then get crystal clear about that result so you can communicate that to another person. If you are not crystal clear about the result, you cannot delegate. You'll set that person up for a great deal of frustration and failure. And yourself too, you'll be very frustrated and the idea will fail. Get clear about the results. It's harder than it sounds. If you have an idea and it's just a foggy vision off in the distance, that's not a result. The result has to be crystal clear, clearly described. Here's the second thing. Once you're clear on the result, you need to be able to delegate authority to that person as well. The authority means these are all your decisions. It's your decision to make this. It's no one else's. It's yours to make. Now, this decision is not yours, and that decision is not yours, but everything relating to this result we're trying to achieve is yours. And in a complex environment, you need to communicate to other people that this person now has that authority. Anytime you have been the recipient of a project that's been delegated to you, and the authority has been delegated with it, you have had a much higher chance of success than when the project was delegated and the authority wasn't actually spelled out. Crystal clear about the results, delegate the authority, and then be very, very careful about delegating the responsibility to get the work done, to do the work, or to have other people engaged to get the work done. When you delegate a result to someone that's a big result you're wanting them to achieve, it doesn't mean they're doing all the heavy lifting. It just means they are the one where the buck stops. The result stops with them. They are responsible to get it done. A little sidebar here. One more thing you want to make sure you delegate is the responsibility for follow-up and follow-through. When I delegate something to someone, I expect that they, and I will tell them that they are going to communicate back to me what their progress is. I'm not going to follow them around. It makes me crazy to follow people around and follow up and follow up and follow up and follow up. That doesn't work, and then I don't want to delegate, and then I fall prey to one of those roadblocks or traps that happened earlier that I talked about. Make sure you delegate the responsibility to follow up with you back to that person. You say something like, I'm not going to check on the progress of this project or this result you're trying to achieve. It's up to you to keep me in the loop. If I ever have to come to you and ask you how it's going, then that's a failure on your part. And here's the best way to communicate with me and the best times to communicate with me. And the stuff I'm going to want to know is this. You are responsible for coming back to me with that result. You got to outrun me in that regard. And understand that I'm delegating all that responsibility to you. You're failing if I have to come to you. That is a very, very important thing. One of the reasons why you and I do not delegate is because we realize how much work it is to follow up with a person. And so, we go back to the lazy thing. It's easier to just do it ourselves. That's the third thing. I'm delegating the responsibility to achieve it along with the responsibility to keep me engaged and informed. Here's the fourth thing. Make sure that you give the person the resources that they need. Here are your resources. Now, resources always come with constraints. When you're delegating something to someone, spell out the resources and the constraints. For example, you've got $50,000 you can spend. You can't spend $50,001. You can spend up to $50,000. There's not any more money coming. That's it. Also, so money is a constraint. Another constraint might be work with these people, but do not work with these people. Another constraint is definitely a time constraint. If you delegate the responsibility, the accountability, and the authority, make sure it includes constraints like time. This must happen by this date. Now remember, there are a couple of different kinds of dates that you would give to a person. One is a target. It needs to happen in the month of June or in the first week of July, something like that. That's a target. But a deadline is a very specific date. And there is no flexing on those deadlines. That means that when you delegate, you're going to need to negotiate with that person what the constraints are, including time and including resources. They should not have to come back and ask what are the constraints. They should have that as a part of that delegation package. There you go. That's how you delegate. The most important part that gets it all going is getting crystal clear about the result you're wanting that person to achieve. Quick example, if I was to put together a dinner and I want a whole bunch of people to come over for a wonderful dinner and I want this to be a great experience, if I say, here, would you help me with this dinner? And I give you a list of things I want you to shop for, a list of things I want to show up on the table and on the barbecue, and I make sure you get all these things, and then I give someone else a list of people to call and invite to that, I'm not delegating. That's assigning tasks. Here's what delegation sounds like. I want to have 30 people who, and then spell out the characteristics, who all love this and who all like that and who all have this kind of personality or perspective. I want 30 people here or so. And I want to have a meal that makes people feel like this was the best way that they could have spent an evening in an entire month. I want folks to walk away feeling this, this, and this. That's the result that I want to achieve. Now, your constraints are this. Here's how much money you've got to pull off this big dinner party. And also, by the way, don't get any pork, and because some people can't eat pork. Or don't get any Ham's beer, because I don't have any friends or anybody that I would remotely like who likes Ham's beer. Here's some constraints. And I want to have this all set up in time so that we know how to cook this dinner and have it ready by 4 or 5 hours before the event starts. Those are results we're trying to achieve. All right, that's the concept of delegating. Remember, delegate or die. If you don't delegate, and it's important, then it means you're going to be doing it your way for the rest of your life. Hey, I hope this was helpful to you. If it was, go right down below there on this YouTube channel and click that little thumbs up button. That means you liked it. I'd appreciate seeing that. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button, and that will let us know that there's more of you that want more of this kind of stuff. I hope all's going well for you. Remember, leadership is hard. Don't make it harder than it needs to be by not learning how to delegate. Here's to you. Keep up the good work.